How's it going? My name is Nigel and welcome to another episode of Nigel's Code Explorer. So for my first video in this series, I thought I'd start with something simple, and I found this problem on Code Wars. It's about working with a narcissistic number, and it's basically a number of length n in which the sum of its digits to the power of n is equal to the original number. Basically, if you take a look at this example given, 153, and we're breaking it down to its own separate digits, and we're raising it to the power of its length. So 1 to the power of 3 plus 5 to the power of 3 plus 3 to the power of 3 equals to 153. Sounds easy enough. Write a method that takes in a number and which returns whether it is indeed a narcissistic number. So returns a boolean. True if it is, false otherwise. So let's get started with JavaScript first. Before we even start coding, I always recommend to have a game plan on how to solve a problem. This is especially very useful when you're in a code interview. If you have a game plan, that sort of reduces your nervousness during coding. So really good practice to have to keep the habit off. Okay, so first of all, we have to identify our input. And our input is a number or an integer. And the output will be a boolean. True if it is a narcissistic number, and false otherwise. Let's go ahead and create some test cases. So is narcissistic 153, and it should return a boolean, so we should return true. Let's also create two more cases, one more success case and one fail case. 370, and I believe something else is probably going to be false. Okay. Now let's think about our algorithm, how we're going to approach solving this problem. So we know we have a number, and with a number we have to break it down into its own digits. So how do we break a number into its own digits? Well, in the class, in the prototype string object, there's a method called split. So let me just demonstrate on the console real quick. So let's say you have a string apple, and you're gonna split it up. And you're gonna have to pass a delimiter. And in this case, since we want to split it into its chars, all we gotta do is just pass in an apostrophe, two apostrophes, without any white space inside of it. Hit enter, and you'll notice that it splits it into its own chars. So we'll do the same thing with our number. Before we even split it up into its array, we have to convert the number into a string. So let's just say 153, and we need to convert this into a string. So we just pass in 153 into string, and it will return a string. We can then call the split method on it, and it will return to us an array of its string digits. Okay, that's the first step that we're going to do. So the first step again is to convert to string. Second case is to split into array of chars. So once we have an array of chars, what do we have? What do we need to do? We need to transform this into numbers so that we can work with it by raising its power to the number of length of the array. Okay, so in order for us to do that, what we can do is we can call in an abstraction method or map. So an array has this method called map. So let me check it out. Array.map JSMDN. Okay, array prototype.map. It basically creates a new array with the results of calling a provided function on every element in the calling array. We're going to map it up, map and multiply with power of its length. Okay, so basically it's going to look something like this. Oops, array.map element, and then we just return element to the power of its length, something like this. And once we have that, we're gonna have this 25 and this is 27. Okay, and then we just need to sum it up. Sum elements in array. Now there's two ways to go about doing this. The first way probably is the most intuitive way, as just to iterate through it and sum up its elements. The second way is to use the inbuilt reduce method for array. So we just pass in a callback function into the reduce method, and we can then reduce the array into just one number or one element. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on coding. So I'm going to initialize the function is narcissistic, pass in a number, and first of all we have to convert it to a string. Okay, so string dot number, and then we get to call the split method on it, passing in just 2 apostrophes without any white space inside to get the array of chars. Once we have that, we just have to call the map method on it. Oh, before we even do that, let's get the length of the number of digits. So let length is equals to array dot length. We have that array dot map passing the callback function, which will then be called upon on every element in the array, and we'll just convert it back into a number. Now we actually don't have to do this. We can just call element, which is the string in this case, raise it to the power of its length. That's possible, but it's not good practice. What JavaScript does is that it does implicit conversion. So we should always try to avoid working with implicit conversion. Always be very explicit during writing code, just to make sure that there are no defects. Especially really important when you're building larger applications. So we can convert it back to a number and raise it to the power of its length. And now let's check to see what we have for our array. Let's save it. Oh, hold on, I've not saved it. Save it and let's check. There we have. Oh. Hold on, let me just check real quick. What is length? And let me just comment out these 2 lines of code. So I'm only working with 1. And let's see what we have. So 3 is the length. So it should do that. Oh, I know why. I did not return it. That's fine. That's why. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to hit save again. And let's run it. And it should be... Oh, my bad. So array.map returns a new array. It does not mutate the original array. In Ruby, there's actually 2 methods. So array.map it does this. Oops. It does something like this. And also there's another version which is just like this. So this version mutates the original array. In JavaScript, the map just returns an array, returns a new array. So what we have to do in this case, we have to reassign the local variable array to the return value of the map method that was called on the array. Okay. Save that. There we have it. We have an array that has each element raised to the power of 3. Now all we need to do left is to sum it up. So as I mentioned that there are 2 ways to do this. Let me start with the first way. You can do a for loop. That is possible, and this goes on and on. But I like to use the forEach method because it has more of an abstraction and it's much more clear, I think. So let's go ahead and we'll do that. Let's do array.forEach function.element, and we'll actually before we do that, we have to initialize a local variable within this function, that total, and we'll just initialize it to value of 0. So basically what's going to happen is that we're going to iterate through every element in the array, and we're going to add the element itself to a running total, basically. So what I mean by that is total plus total equals to total plus element. So every time it goes around, it takes total, so 0 plus element, so 0 plus 1 becomes total, and the next round, 125, it'll be 1 plus 125 equals to 126, and it goes on. Of course, there is a shorthand for this. Instead of writing this long piece of code, we can just do this instead, and that will take care of itself. That is equivalent to the previous statement. Okay, we'll do that. And we'll just check what total is. $153, there we have it. Now all we need to do is to return it. Return total equals to number. So it'll return true if the total is equals to number, false otherwise. And returns true. And it returns true as well. Nice. Okay, let's go ahead and refactor this code. I want to talk about working with the reduce method, and then we're going to do more abstraction to make it even better than this. So first of all, we can improve upon this. I think instead of using the forEach method, what we can do is we can use the reduce method. So we can do this: accumulator and current element. We can just say accumulate plus current element, and we can remove this local variable that was initialized here. And we can do this. Actually, you know what? We have to have that so that we can have the return value of this be assigned to the local variable total. Now we just have to run it again. Oops, what happened? Let's see. Reduce. Oh, I know why. Again, we have to put a return statement, otherwise it won't work. There we go. And true, true, true. Perfect. Now let's take it a step further. Let's further refactor this code. Right now it's kind of long, and let's actually move this logic into its own separate function. Let's do that. Let's see. I'm going to name this as function raised to power. And I'm going to take this. Okay. Array map, and we can just say map raised to power. And then let's go ahead and separate this logic out into its own function as well. So function sum, accumulator, as well as the current element. And let's actually go ahead and remove this code. Paste it right here. And there we go. So we can just chain call this method. Since map array.map returns a new array, we can then chain the reduce method onto the return value of the map, which will be a new array. So reduce and sum. And if we run this, we'll actually have a problem. Because length is not accessible. If we call raised to power, it does not access length because it was not defined within the function. This involves scoping rules and closure. So in order for length to be accessible, we need to move this function inside here. Okay, and there we have it. If we run it, it should work. Oh, element is not defined. Line 36. Oh, there we go. True, true, true. So that's it for the JavaScript part. I think this fulfills the requirement, and I'm sure there are other ways to improve upon this, but I think for this problem, this is sufficient. So that's the end of the first part of this problem, working solely with JavaScript. Part 2 of this video will be the same problem, but we'll be working with Excel VBA instead.